Remember in December of 2018 when Sony came out with the PlayStation Classic? 2 holiday seasons prior, Nintendo had released the NES Classic, and then they released the SNES Classic the year after that, and both were smash hits. Not just because it was cool to have a taste of old hardware in the 21st century, but because the game lineups the consoles came with were incredible. Yet, if I remember correctly, I was not the only one whose first look at the PS1 Classic's 20-game lineup left them confused. Oh hey, you've got Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid. Ooh, and Jumping Flash and Siphon Filter, that'll be cool. Okay, Resident Evil, Tekken 3, Persona, Rayman, Wild Arms, and Twisted Metal makes sense. But where's Spyro the Dragon? Or Crash Bandicoot? Or Symphony of the Night? Or Mega Man Legends? Or maybe Final Fantasy 9 or 8 or Tactics? Or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater? Or Gran Turismo? Or Parappa the Rapper? Or The Legend of Dragoon? Or Pac-Man World? Or Ape Escape? How did none of those make it on there? Needless to say, I was confused, and did not end up purchasing a PS Classic to chill with my Nintendo ones. But if someone out there did end up buying one, simply to play Final Fantasy VII on it, I would not be surprised. Because yes, the game is that good. Hello, welcome to H7 Bus. My name is Nathaniel Welch, and this is Video Game Previewer. In this video, we'll be talking about Final Fantasy VII, which I played on the Nintendo Switch. The modern port of the game, which is certainly the most convenient way to play it, can be purchased on Steam, PS4, PS5, iOS, Android, and Xbox consoles 1 and later. If you're a big fan of portable gaming, the Switch version is definitely a great option. I think it's the way to go if you'd prefer it on a handheld. I played it on the Switch because that's a version of the game I already owned when I recently decided I wanted to play it. I purchased it years ago. After having gone through it though, I think whenever I next play it again, it'll probably be on some form of a PlayStation console. Because while having it on handheld is nice, the game has this huge legacy and carries with it such a sense of honor that I feel like it was made to be seen and played on a TV. Which it obviously was. And while I could have just docked my Switch, I wanted to play with headphones. And no Joy-Con audio jack means no headphones. But while I would have preferred for it to be on a TV, the medium through which I played it didn't negatively affect my experience at all. And the port is great. It offers some enhancements from the original and optional but handy QOL features I actually didn't use at all. We'll dive into those later. Let's get something straight. My hope with this video is that you'll become interested in playing this game if you haven't already. And any way you choose to play it is probably a pretty safe bet, with the modern port being a more than reasonable and functional way to do so. Since I think Final Fantasy VII is awesome, and my goal is to interest you in playing or replaying it, we should definitely talk about what makes it so good. On with the video! Each mainline Final Fantasy game takes place in a different setting from the others, featuring its own new cast of characters, story to play through, and world to explore. So what's FF7 about? Genetically enhanced spike-haired man with PTSD joins an eco-terrorist group that's trying to blow up an evil corporation that's drinking the planet's blood. He's joined by a gun hand man, his girlfriend, and a flower girl. And oh look, there's an evil angel man over there. Yeah, that's basically it. In all seriousness, Final Fantasy VII takes place on a planet like our own, but it contains and features many things that our world does not. Unlike the first 5 games in the franchise, FF7's genre is not that of high medieval fantasy featuring magic, monsters, and crystals. It more takes after 6, which starred many more sci-fi elements than any game had in the franchise up to that point. But where 6 is more steampunk, 7 is more industrial and modern. You're still dealing with magic, monsters, and airships, but also science, motorcycles, guns, and reactors that are powered by a spiritual energy that's basically the lifeblood of the planet. Known as the Life Stream, it also serves as the base for the game's magic system and its world's afterlife. That all might seem like a lot. You'd think FF7's setting would feel overwhelming, but one of the greatest things about the game is that it doesn't. All these fantastical, spiritual, or scientific concepts are mixed together and balanced really well. The result is a world that feels grounded and surprisingly consistent, that's full of realistically written people that struggle and worry while some seem to regularly succeed. Not everyone is happy. Some certainly aren't, but are still generous and helpful, while others are impolite. Motivations aren't always based purely on good or evil. You may meet a random NPC that has complex reasons for how they're treating you. FF7's world feels immediately very developed, but not to the extent that it's hard to grasp and gain an understanding of it. And as you'd expect, that ends up serving the plot pretty well. The story begins in a city called Midgar. The Shinra electric power companies make reactors, provide resources and energy to many, allowing them to lead very comfortable lives. But at what cost? The life of the planet. The game opens with Avalanche, an eco-terrorist group set on saving the planet, carrying out a mission to blow up one of Midgar's 8 main reactors. Your protagonist in this party-based RPG is a sword-wielding butt-kicker named Cloud. Cloud is an ex-soldier first class. He is a genetically enhanced former member of Shinra's military, who due to his knowledge of the company, has been hired by Avalanche to help them destroy Midgar's reactors. Cloud is joined by Barrett Wallace, a passionate man with a gun arm, who is the leader of your bomb-planting team, Tifa Lockhart, a martial artist and childhood friend of Cloud's, and eventually Aerith Gainsborough, a florist who will act as your group's main magic user. Together, you must stop Shinra and save Midgar. However, there's much more to the plot than that. Many more party members to meet, places to go, things to do, and stories to experience. You're set up to think that you may spend the whole game going from reactor to reactor, but within the first few hours, the game quickly reveals its scale, depth, and the reality that it intends to tell a wider narrative than one purely focused around Midgar. I encourage you to buckle up and enjoy the ride, because you'll be taken on a wonderful journey through places and story beats you never thought you'd go. Final Fantasy VII tells an epic story that I immediately found compelling. Its development history is pretty interesting too. FF7 was originally going to be a Super Nintendo game. After the success of Final Fantasy VI, Square decided 7 as a game would innovate and improve on but still be made in that FF6 style, rather than take a risk by completely changing it up and doing something different on the SNES or making the jump to 3D for the next generation of consoles. While in the middle of development though, the FF7 team had to put the game on hold and shift to helping the Chrono Trigger team finish their game up. By the time CT was completed, the 5th generation of consoles loomed even closer, and after now choosing to for sure make the jump to 3D, Square settled on producing Final Fantasy VII for the PS1 rather than the N64, after having grown tired of their passion being restricted by Nintendo's hardware. Up to this point, Final Fantasy had been super successful in Japan, but hadn't reached those same heights in North America. So, for Final Fantasy VII, Square and their huge team and large budget, together with Sony, pulled out all the stops for localization and marketing to ensure that the game would be a success in other regions. And it was. Final Fantasy VII released on January 31st, 1997, to critical, commercial, and fan success, the game having sold a few million, over 10 million copies since then. It was scored a 38 out of 40 by both Famitsu Magazine and EGM, and received multiple Game of the Year awards in 1997. It was lauded for its graphics, music, story, characters, FMVs, and of course, its gameplay. We know FF7 nowadays as one of the most influential and legendary games of all time, and its huge legacy has led to much official connected content being produced. This includes multiple handheld, mobile, and console spin-off games, as well as a feature film, Japanese OVA, soundtrack CDs, and even full-blown novels. It's also currently being completely remade and reimagined as an action RPG trilogy, with its first 2 parts having been released and positively received as the creation of this video. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other stuff I'm missing. So, Final Fantasy VII is this legendary game. That's probably why I first played it, right? Well, no. I'd watched my brother play through the first disc on the PS3's PS1 version of the game. And by watch, I mean we shared a room, so I probably paid attention to half of it and played on my 3DS while it was on in the background the other half of the time. Eventually, it came out on iOS, and since I'd enjoyed watching Scott play it and liked Final Fantasy in general, I bought it. I played through probably about 2/3 of the first disc before forgetting about it for a few months. When I later picked it up again, I did the same thing. Over time, from exposure to gaming history in general, and also because of Scott, I learned more about the game and what it meant to people. I saw Advent Children a few times, and knew I'd fully play through FF7 eventually. Moving has been a big change for me. and I've found it's both forced and given me the opportunity to be reflective and thoroughly think about some things. While in the process of designing this show and really going through some stuff, I found myself listening to a lot of Final Fantasy music, which is something I regularly used to do. It's been about 3 or 4 years. Anyway, I, on a lighter day, began to contemplate what it is I really like about video games, what types of games I'd mostly like to spend my time with, and which franchises are my favorite, because I would really like to dig into a few of them. And I think Final Fantasy came as an answer to every one of those questions. I like the music and grand stories. I like how the games attempt to challenge, impact, and inspire you. I really enjoy its core gameplay, whether it's turn-based or not, and I've always been a huge fan of the franchise, even though I haven't personally played much of what it features. So, as I was beginning Video Game Previewer, I decided I might as well jump into an FF game, and through reviewing it, I could see if my hunches were correct or not. And what better way to start than with what's probably the most popular game in the franchise. Spoiler alert, there will be more FF to come. I had a great time, let's talk about it. Final Fantasy VII is a very charming game. It has a lot of appealing qualities, though for many nowadays, they may not consider its graphics to be one of those qualities. But you gotta think about it in context. At the time, its polygons, FMVs, and cinematic style were incredible and groundbreaking for 1997. And Sony was trying to sell PlayStations, so it makes sense then that they would fill ads with footage of one of the best looking games around. Many people picked up PlayStations and copies of FF7 simply because of its looks, and got met with one of the greatest games of all time. It's what finally made Final Fantasy big in North America. Players were tricked into buying a turn-based game, which wasn't a hugely popular genre back then. And though they aren't head-turning anymore, you can still tell while playing just how innovative FF7's visuals were. First of all, its character models are iconic, because while they may be simple, they're memorable and distinct. You can learn a lot about some characters simply by looking at them. And for the main cast, their menu portraits do a lot to help you visualize the characters in the world. The game's FMVs, while prehistoric compared to what would come later with FFs on the PS2, are still such a treat to watch. It's odd that some of them feature character designs more reflective of the game's concept art, while others are in the more SD Gundam style of the characters' field designs, but gameplay transitions into some of these cinematics so smoothly. It's honestly awesome, considering how many more modern games contain jarring transitions from gameplay to cutscenes. Saying FF7 is very cinematic is an apt way to describe its approach to all its design, pacing, and storytelling. There's something very movie-like about it, yet you still feel like you're playing a game, because you are. It instead adds to the excitement, and a great example of this is when you enter combat. The screen flashes and twists and brings you into a new, higher polycount scene, and the camera dances and shifts between angles throughout the fight. FF7 is also a very immersive game. The battle scenes are a huge part of why. The background of each fight is usually a pretty accurate representation of where you just were. Models, when attacking, are actually animated to hit each other too, which was a cool new thing at the time. The difference between model and background details when in the field compared to when you're in battles might take some getting used to, but I personally didn't find it immersion breaking at all. What may be a little distracting for you though, depending on how you play FF7, is how the game's pre-rendered backgrounds, featuring its field models when not exploring the world map, are kind of blurry. If you're playing the modern port of the game, there's been some up-resing and smoothing done to its models, but the pre-rendered backgrounds are still lower resolution. This does wonders for visual clarity due to how much it makes Cloud stand out from the backgrounds, but he's obviously not supposed to, and I would rather him not. So, was it always this way? Well, no. FF7 was originally made with a CRT in mind, and it's actually crazy if you can find footage of someone emulating the original with a high quality CRT filter applied, how the game looks more detailed. Because the models are closer in resolution to the pre-rendered backgrounds in the original version, the two worlds actually blend really well. It looks super awesome, and I'd love to play the game again that way, but I'm not a big fan of emulation, and CRT TVs are incredibly expensive, and I'd have to run it on a PS3 or get a PS1 Classic or an original copy of the game to run on my PS2 so that the visuals are displayed without smoothing, so I'll stick with the modern port for now. It's got improvements to the localization, as well as what I consider to be some unnecessary quality of life features on some versions, like a 3x speed multiplier, encounter disabler, and God mode. I didn't use them during my playthrough, but if you just like running around really fast, I get why you might. They also have mouths. You really can't go wrong with any version of the game, though I would avoid any version of the original if you don't have some CRT magic to complement it. As a whole though, I actually think the game has aged fine graphically. Yes, it has aged. It looks old and dated nowadays, and that is because it is old and dated. But you can tell how good it looked back then. The visual style and look of the world is still super engaging, and though fuzzy, the pre-rendered backgrounds are wonderfully detailed. I love pre-rendered backgrounds. I wish some games still use them. Basically, if the devs want the environments of their game to be high in detail, but they don't have the processing power to consistently display that detail in real time, they can pretty much take a picture of that by only rendering a single frame of it. Then, dimensions, boundaries, and collision are applied to this single frame that you're basically walking on top of. The result is really neat looking areas that can be displayed for pretty low system cost. Besides some difficulty that comes with the mapping them for your character to explore, the only real downside of pre-rendered backgrounds is how they practically lock you out of having a player-controlled 3D camera. That is not a bad thing though. It depends on the game you're making, but for a cinematic, story-driven, turn-based RPG like FF7, the pre-rendered backgrounds work well. Why is that? Like in a film, because you can only have one view of the background at once, whoever's designing or directing the shot can be very intentional in where they place the camera. They can help you see what they want you to see, rather than whatever crazy thing you'd maybe go looking at if you had full camera control. I'm all for linear, intentional, focused design in games nowadays. I've had my fair share of freedom in video games and want to play stuff that feels purposely crafted. FF7 is one of those games. People will actually talk over each other, and you'll be hit with 4 plenty readable text boxes at once. And even in their SD form, characters manage to be silly and expressive. They've all got their own exclusive animations inside and outside of battle too, that you'll see them perform plenty of times. The way the dialogue is written for each character differs as well. FF7 oozes creativity when it comes to their characters, monsters, bosses, and areas. The whole game does. Who am I kidding? There's so much variety and much to pique your curiosity, inspire your creative side, and weird you out. And it's all presented in marvelous PS1 graphics and animations that I like and will always dig, even if they're old and scorned by the masses now. What surely has to be accepted by all, though, is the game's soundtrack. It's incredible. I mean, you can tell immediately 2 minutes into the game that it's amazing and is going to be. I'd already heard most of it before my recent full playthrough, but I assume that's what the majority of people figured on their first, even during the game's intro, that they were in for an audio roller coaster of pure ecstasy. No other Final Fantasy game sounds like this, though many of them sound like each other. There's so much variety, my goodness, and it all fits the scenes and moments it's made to score so perfectly. It's exciting, it's sad, it's bold, it's stirring, it's unsettling, it's whatever Mr. Uematsu, surely my favorite composer ever, wants it to be, and whatever the moment needs it to be. There's not many tracks that repeat either, but many of them have musical callbacks to others, so it all feels connected. And like with their designs, each main character's theme does a great job at teaching you something about them and their story. I love how it all sounds, which I'm sure you expected. The PS1 sound chip is so good. It certainly sounds more real than an SNES, yet not really by much. It's kind of like what you'd expect every instrument to sound like if it was being played from the preset version of it onboard an old keyboard or something. But there's also these fascinating industrial and metallic-based sounds that are featured in some songs, as well as one legendary case of compressed vocals that somehow come through very clear. I know that now you'd want to hear everything be fully orchestrated rather than more MIDI, but there's a reason why FF7 utilizes the PS1's onboard sound chip rather than the extra space on its CD-ROM. Though he had planned to have the game feature normal-sounding high-fidelity CD music, Nobuo Uematsu decided that the increase in load times caused by the larger file size of the tracks would have a negative impact on the player experience. He did decide to go with CD quality music for Final Fantasy VIII, which I've yet to play, so I don't know how it went, but I'm glad he went with the seamless transition option for FF7. The speed at which you jump between where you are now in combat or a new zone is a huge part of the game's cinematic feeling. It plays a big role in helping maintain the game's great pace. It's pretty charming too. I love that word. 21 of the best tracks are The Prelude, Mako Reactor, Anxiety, Fight On, The Chase, the main theme of Final Fantasy VII, On That Day 5 years ago, Costa del Sol, The Great Warrior, Descendant of Shinobi, The Nightmare Begins, Sid's theme, Words Drowned by Fireworks, Listen to the Cries of the Planet, Genova Complete, Birth of a God, One Winged Angel, of course, The Planet's Crisis, the ending credits, and my two favorites, Flowers Blooming in the Church and Tifa's theme. I only just listed a fourth of the soundtrack, and I kid you not, I could have put about 100% of it on this list. It's great, and it's huge. What makes gaming special to me is that it's an interactive medium. It's not just a plot being shown to you on a screen. You're to, yes, experience, but also take part in the whole thing. Because of this, your involvement, sometimes a moment is so powerful that even when you knew it was coming for years and I'd seen it before, playing through it can still affect you. I think that's why gaming is not for everyone. For some, it's simply not fun, and that's okay. But for others, it can impact them too deeply because of the investment partaking in the experience creates. And that has a lot to do with why Final Fantasy VII is so good. It's long, and whether you're invested in the plot or not, you'll get invested in the characters. Most will become invested in them because of the story, but if you don't care about the story, the characters will matter to you eventually because they hit hard or have a cool ability and you like that. After enough time spent playing, you'll eventually care. I like FF7 because it was easy to care about the characters. They were not one-dimensional. There was more to each of them than meets the eye, and even without the opportunity to explore their histories equally, they're all perceivably complex and different, yet they become connected. Everyone in the main cast had an arc, and were somehow all relatable, even though their world is fictional and fantastical. I found Cloud super relatable, but I'm not genetically enhanced and I don't have PTSD, so maybe a better phrase would be to say that it's easy to empathize with the characters, even some of the villains, to understand them even if you can't fully relate to what they're going through. And the music helps with that. It's so vital to the game, it's dynamic, it's fitting to each moment, and clearly so intentionally designed. There's a certain track I like that begins with a calming, yet painful refrain. And it shifts into sounding so oppressive, which matches the moment it plays during. Yet when hope starts to emerge, at a pace matching the moment, an encouraging new melody quietly starts to build. And then it surges, perfectly accompanying what you're watching. And you feel it in your chest. There's not just something unfolding before you, the music makes it meaningful. It's got to, right? Doesn't it have to mean something? Or else, why would I be willing to play a game, become invested in it, and be affected by it if it didn't mean anything? It's got to be inspiring. It's got to be memorable. It's got to stretch you and challenge you. Or there's no reason to let these polygons, pixels, and MIDI notes touch your heart and influence you. Because if you're able to engage with FF7, it will. So keep that in mind. If you're thinking about picking up the game, playing through it is like going on a journey. There's ups and downs, and I can't promise you'll come out of it the same way you were when you went into it. What is it like then to play Final Fantasy VII? It's awesome. I love turn-based combat, and it's really good here. It's easy to engross yourself in, and it feels so rewarding to level your characters, unlock new moves, and test out party combinations. Newer Final Fantasy games lean more action RPG than turn-based, and I like action RPGs, but this is just my favorite. Chess is fun. Some people somehow find checkers fun. This is fun. The combat isn't too static because it's not turn by turn. It's all in real time. Each character has a turn they take where they execute an action, but rather than being built around a fixed order, everyone has a speed that determines how soon it is until their next turn. And while you're messing around with move selection, time is still passing. So while you're taking too long to decide, your enemy's time gauge is filling up as well, and you might end up getting hit. But your other party members' gauges will have been filling up too, and they may be ready to go right after Barrett finally finds that ether to give to Cloud. I don't want you to worry though. The game doesn't punish your experimentation or decision making. I'd say it encourages it. That results in your trying new things and testing stuff out while in combat being really fun, which is kind of the point of play, right? You can totally learn the timings and moveset of a certain boss or enemy, and can figure how many turns you can get away with in between theirs, and that can totally juice up your creativity as far as builds and party roles are concerned. What's crazy though is that with combat this awesome, storying around in Final Fantasy VII doesn't get boring. It was actually the driving part of the game for me. Though I totally could have played hours more of challenging and fun fights and stuff, it's like I was tolerating the incredible combat just to get to the next, even greater story moment. Yes, the controller is basically out of your hands in these moments, as it's just a whole lot of reading, but it's seriously worth it in my opinion. There's this great moment where you get to actually play through an extended and important flashback rather than just read about it. And sure, other games do that, and I'm sure FF7 wasn't the first, but actually getting to play through a character's history while learning more about a few of the game's most important characters and an event super important to the plot of the game is just so satisfying, especially because of some of the main literary and storytelling tropes the game utilizes. And though you don't really play through any other backstory moments than that one throughout the game, and do find yourself getting hit with cutscenes or dialogue at any moment, when you're playing a game that progresses its story in a way that doesn't feel clunky or make you feel like you have no agency because of that, you know it's a special game. One really special thing about the game is its materia system. Materia is something you can equip to each party member depending on the items they're wearing and wielding. That determines what spells they can cast. The flexibility it offers you is incredible, because even though each character has their own natural stat leanings, you could technically use anyone in any role. It's kind of like Final Fantasy II, but people didn't like that game. Now, that's not to say you should make the lowest health party member a tank, or the worst caster your black mage, but this ensures that you can never be without a healer in your party, unless you don't want one for some reason. Because anyone can use any magic, it gives you even more resources when deciding how you want to build your party. The catch though is that materia is pretty limited, and you won't find duplicates of many kinds immediately, so it doesn't pay for everyone to be a caster, especially since having most materia equipped will lower your melee stats, so it's good to be sure. The game does give you a lot of summons though, like they just keep giving you different ones, and they're super powerful, so it's crazy. They're also accessed through materia, and they cost a ton of MP, but lead to these super long sequences where you see these big dudes do tons of damage to your opponent. I guess most people employed the port's 3x speed feature to skip these summons lengths, as they grow tired of watching them after a while, but I never did. By the time I got some of the longer ones too, the fights I'd use them in were tense enough that I wouldn't really notice the sequence length anyway. Summons are super powerful, but each party member has their own set of super moves called limit breaks. They become available when a bar that fills when you take damage reaches full, and include huge single target or AoE attacks, full party heals, or one of your guys literally going beast mode. You'll have to play for yourself and see what I mean. The limits have tons of variety, and they're exciting to use, and the game as a whole has tons of depth, but it isn't overwhelming. You don't have to jump in deep if you don't want to. You can just enjoy the story without touching much side content, but you can also keep the way you approach combat pretty simple. The game is not too big. I mean, it's packed full of content and can be super long if you choose to complete all its optional content, and may already be long depending on how you define that for yourself. You've got all these expansive areas to journey through, a loaded story to read through, and a whole world map filled with optional places and points of interest. Yet it's all pretty well designed, and I don't know that any of it feels like bloat quite in the same way of what many open world games are filled with nowadays. Again, the game is very intentionally designed. I encourage you to explore when you want to and play till the end, going and doing whatever you think will be fun. You're crafting your own memories and experience playing the game as you make choices and progress. It is fun to explore, and stumbling into side content is awesome and doesn't take away from other stuff, even if it doesn't always feel too natural. But FF7 is filled with mini games that aren't always very fun. And I guess they mostly all are to a degree, with some much more so than others, but a lot of them just feel unnecessary. Besides the fact that there's an area full of optional minigames for you to play, the quality of which doesn't totally matter given that they're optional, there are some times where the story will lead to some gimmick sections. They're short, almost all easy to control, and non-frustrating, but they mostly all feel out of place. Some of them make sense and feel narratively satisfying given how they're set up within the story, but others are just silly, and some actually do feel like padding, though it literally is just 3-minute padding at the most. I'll excuse a lot of it here, honestly just because of the time and the scale of the game. I get wanting to mix up the gameplay or provide something more for folks who just bought a PS1 to play, so while appreciated, I just don't know if some of them needed to be there. It's something I see a lot with JRPGs, especially the older ones, which this one technically is, that don't take the no fat, no filler approach to their storytelling. Again, they're basically all short here, though I refuse to play that tower defense game, my guild is my own. My point is, too many minigames can slow down your story pacing in a negative way. Create less, make them more polished, implement them deeper into the game, and overall just stick with your good core gameplay. Because if it's as good as it is here, and as easy to just continue to play, why take away from it? In fact, you may actually leave FF7 wanting more of its core combat in a good way, because the difficulty is basically perfect for a story-driven game, which means it gets challenging and stays tense for most of the time, but you'll probably actually game over very few times. The boss fights are great, and some of them are fairly difficult, which ends up feeling refreshing since I think the game's slightly too high encounter rate can leave you feeling overpowered at times. My favorite boss fights were towards the end of the game, and I actually, after beating the game, reloaded one of my saves later that day to play back through them. If you do think the game's too easy peasy though, there are some tanky optional super bosses in the game that'll require you to grind levels to even have a chance at beating. There's a lot of possibilities for challenge runs you can do too, and I recommend looking up some ideas if you're interested. I did actually do one myself technically. I never upgraded Cloud's sword. I upgraded everyone else's weapons, but not Cloud's, because the Buster Sword is his cannon sword, and I thought it'd be weird to see any other weapon in its place, so I made him my main damage spellcaster and summoner, focusing more on tanking in the early game while he still had the health for it, before giving Tifa cover materia instead, because she also had counterattack and did some brutal damage. Her and Cloud were essentially the core of my party. Anyway, Cloud is basically the second or third best choice for a main caster in the game, but since he's the main character, he's also the highest leveled and good at everything, so there was some difficulty not having his melee attacks hit hard, but I think I managed pretty well. Ultima and Bahamut Zero are killers, dude. FF7 also features some puzzles, which I really liked, and they were also well balanced difficulty-wise. There's this one connected to an optional party member that I totally encourage you to break out the old pen and paper for. It was super fun to solve. You should be able to get through the whole game without a guide. I don't like using them, so I didn't, besides their research materia and a few other things, but for the most part, you should be good to play through the game guideless without really getting lost or anything. The game also has this great balance in its writing as well. It tells a serious, dramatic, and dark story, but it can also be really funny and goofy at times. Yet, it does so without taking away from the moment. Humor is used to balance tone and ensure that you don't get too depressed rather than to just be needlessly funny. There's a difference between Thor: Love and Thunder and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. One is basically a comedy, that's use of humor can take away from more important story moments at times, while the other uses humor to keep you comfortable during its epic, but intense and virtually heavy plot. Final Fantasy VII is more the latter. It uses its silliness to disarm and reset you, while teaching you about the characters and preparing you for what's next without taking away from what just transpired. There's also a great balance in the fair bit of dialogue options you're given as Cloud. What I like so much about them is that one will generally seem like the right in-character option for him, while the other is actually a different, but also totally reasonable answer for him, that he might go with depending on what was weird with the lasagna he had the night before. It makes you think about each and every choice, because they pretty much always both fit the character, so that gives them more weight, even if the overarching story stays the same. Which, it's really good. Man, I would love to just dissect it and talk about it, but this is a spoiler-free show. But know this, it's probably my favorite story of any video game I've actually played. Its big bullet point plot points are great. And yeah, while the way you get between some of them is kind of silly, there are some other times that'll have you super immersed and very tense, feeling like you have no moment to rest as you jump from one to the other. The first real question the plot immediately presents you is of Cloud's PTSD and broken mind, and it's super compelling. I think because the game's age. Seeing a character with those struggles would probably be more common nowadays, so it makes Cloud and the desire to see the development of his story immediately very captivating. The game being very focused and well written also alludes to future plots often. And you have no idea during your first playthrough, but the way it goes about it is masterful. It'd be nuts on a second playthrough. There's so much setup and many little connections and details that when pieces come together, you'll be left with your mind blown. The setting has so much depth too, which only adds to the story. For a game originally designed to be a one-off, the world feels so developed, but certainly not overly so. The world is super cool, and you're left with questions and curiosities about it. There isn't a brain-melting amount of lore and information to be gathered about anything and everything. It's mostly just the necessary need to know about the necessary stuff. It's also paced very well. Definitely perfect right off the bat, but it does stumble when you initially venture into the larger world for the first time. It corrects though, and even if you got lost for a little bit, the game is still so fun that I assume you'd still be playing anyway. I think the game's pacing issues, mostly between some of its gameplay switch-ups, is in reality heavily related to how much Square was trying to innovate with every part of this game. If they hadn't made an odd decision here or there, I'd be surprised. The ending was not odd though. It was done so well. There's not an epilogue. When the game's over, it's over. But it ends in a really solid way. It actually leads into its movie sequel great too. I don't use this word lightly or often, but the game is beautiful. Not just certain moments visually or because of its expertly crafted music or the depth of its world, but the story. That is what makes it beautiful. I'm not a very outwardly emotional person. I consider myself to be very analytical and to subscribe to very logical thought processes, which is why I was so surprised with how much this game made me feel, and how much it still does. I kid you not, I can listen to certain songs from its soundtrack and immediately be taken back to that moment in the game. It's got great combat, but the story is what really has left a lasting impression on me. This is not the kind of game you complete and walk away from carefree and with a smile on your face. This is the kind of game you mourn. You don't want it to end. And you could just go and play it all over again. I've had to stop myself multiple times from doing so since beating it, but you know that eventually you have to move on. And clearly others have felt the same way, and have wanted to move on as little as I have because there's so much more Final Fantasy VII content to explore now. I'm super excited to play Remake and its trilogy eventually. I will review those games for this show. But now is not the time. Now is when I take what I learned from the game and I move on and grow. And eventually I'll come back and re-experience it, whether in this form or another, and see it with different eyes, because I'll be different. What will never be different is how FF7 probably features the best intro and opening few hours as a whole in any game ever. I seriously don't know if any other game I've played can truly match the epicness of FF7's beginning in my mind. It's seriously immersive, interesting, engaging, and awesome. Cool terrain, tight music, fun combat, and an intriguing area. We're planting bombs to save the planet, tanking bullets because we're a super soldier, and getting to fight a huge robot scorpion. You want to learn about the characters? You want to learn about your character, but there's not time. You're on a mission. You pick up some things here and there, but you don't really have time to chat. The opening's pacing is perfect. The game also tutorializes you really good. It gives you many opportunities to experiment. It teaches you the value of patience even in an active time battle system, and makes it clear that it's okay to make mistakes. You can learn from them. Post-intro, even without hearing whole backstories, the game does a great job at quickly and naturally helping you understand characterizations and what to expect from your teammates. The amount you can correctly and easily infer from dialogue is crazy. The entire game was so good, and I actually believe I had fun during all of it. I don't think there was a moment where I felt otherwise. It's obviously aged since 1997, but I think it's done so about as gracefully as possible. So much so that I'd love the ability to experience it on original hardware. It's just really fun to play, but not simply because it's a game. It's more than that to me.
Alright, so I've already beat the game, but I've gone back. I want to try this challenge. Let's see if I can't beat this thing early. Oh, well, I guess I gotta do a fight first. Why not? You're not supposed to fight this guy, but I'm gonna try, because he's real strong, and you can come back early, and oh man, I should have healed. Wow, alright. So I've given everyone magic, and just gonna try to kick his butt. That's a lot of damage, dude. Should have waited. Maybe I should have healed her, but we'll see. It's time for trial and error. Alright, throw out a cure. Because you are not a caster, Tifa. Great. Well, the cure, we'll cover that. And, ooh, I don't know if we can stun him. It'd be cool if we could. It'd be cool if we could, so we can try. Okay. No stun. Got it. Bolt. Bolt, bolt, bolt. Save that. Can we poison the guy? She's got a limit. Alright. Ooh, okay. Here's where it gets scary, I think. Potion. No break. Okay. 2 hits. Let's hold. Alright. Okay. Quickest. Should have healed. Forget I said anything. Quick again. Ooh, cure. That was a ton of damage. Oh, this might be a killer for Cloud. Shoot, dude. She's not even here anymore. Okay, it's all Cloud now. He's got the high damage, so I think Bolt and Cure is the go-to. Oh, he blocked. How gentlemanly of him. Okay, don't. And yeah, we're dead. This is the scary thing. Looks cool though. Alright. Is everyone dead? Yeah. Okay. Gonna load that save. Alright. Trying this again. I think it's possible. I think I can do it. I mean, you're really not supposed to fight him at all. You're supposed to get a chocobo and run past, or you just wait for him to be on the other side of the pond and then run. That's usually what I do, because I don't usually want to go through the process of procuring a chocobro. He might attack after this. Okay, sweet. I'm nervous, man. I am. But there's 2 limit breaks here, so that could be good. It's damage for sure. Okay, I just need him to not kick someone out of the party. I think this is... The problem is... Okay. That's a problem. That... Even though I've got them all in the back... Beta still does so much damage. I don't know if there's any resisting it. Hope you can get Braver off in time. I don't want him to die. This is risky what I'm doing here. I'm banking on him hitting Tifa, I guess. Or Beta. So, the hope is that someone dodges now. Can dodge the attack. Nah. Dude, am I just not doing enough damage? I don't know if I don't even know what type of damage that is. I wish I had something that could resist that. Like if I knew, I could try to resist it, right? Alright, loading the save. Alright, I looked it up. Beta does fire damage. Oh, who to give it to though? I guess it would be Cloud. Alright, let's see how this goes. There it is. Dodge, please. Alright, Going back. Let's see how this goes. Somersault. Come on, poison, poison, poison. Good. Sweet. Alright, this is bad, because she's not at full health. But if they take less damage from being in the back, which they shouldn't because it's a magic spell, 604. Okay, this is doable. I just figured this out. So, Cloud, yeah, I can equip him with this. Because I think Spirit is magic defense. So if he's got magic defense and fire defense, then he just might, and we take cover off him because we need him to be at full health. He just might be able to survive all this. Kick. Okay, this limit should be good damage. Unless it kicks Steve out of the clouds. Okay, we're doomed. Again and again and again. Okay. Loading it up again. Bio, please work, Bio. Boys. Yes! No, dude. Okay, but how much damage is it gonna do? Is this possible? That's the question. Unless someone dodges. That's always great. 577. And he doesn't have that much health. So I actually can't do it unless I were to grind with these guys. Alright. I just read something that I think is so dumb, but I'm going to give it a try. Basically, the idea is that you defend the whole time, and you just bio the guy, and just expect the poison to kill him. Okay, well it didn't land. This seems like a really long fight. Defend. Okay, but they take a lot less damage with defend. It worked. That's wonderful. And now we cure. And everyone's defending again. For real? Okay. So it apparently, from what I read, won't use beta if you don't. Wait, what the heck? It's back? Apparently, it won't use beta if you don't attack it. Which is such strange design to me. I mean, the point is, you're not supposed to fight it this early anyway. It's supposed to. It gives the game an opportunity to teach you about chocobos, and it gives, or you just use the strategy and run past it, right? But here we are. I might as well do this again, just to see if that was a fluke or something. Cure, defend, defend. That'd be a great T-shirt. Cure, defend, defend. It'd have to be funny though, and I don't know if this would be okay. Now, it's dead. How long do I have till it comes for me? What the heck, dude? Alright, let me show you how I've always done this. So we're over here. This is where you're going to start. Now wait for him to be on the other side, and we're running for that cave. I swear it's possible. I've done this like twice. Look, see? That's it. Just go to that side, you watch the guy, and you battle. And you make it into the cave. And I cut 'cause plot.
I've made it clear that I find Final Fantasy VII to have a great story and a great plot. Part of that is because I think we can actually learn from it. It's purposefully about something, and I like that. Right away, you'll pick up on the game's themes about environmentalism and the pain, oversight, and genuine greed can cause others. But Final Fantasy is about love and loss, and 7 tackles topics of teamwork, found family, togetherness, identity, honesty, broken dreams, and sacrifice excellently. It sets all the characters to each reconcile with their own past, and either move on from it or painfully dive back into it to make good of what they can, while they all grow closer to one another. It's relatable and it's inspiring. We're presented with really human characters that face difficult things to help us understand that we can too. Thank you, Final Fantasy VII, for not being afraid to tell an emotional, bold story featuring characters that struggle in a world that's got its own share of problems. By letting us save that world and see our party grow and develop, we too as players can be inspired to do and be good. And we can learn how to hold on to hope, as well as see and learn just how influential yet heavy sacrifice is. Before we wrap up, one big takeaway I want to quickly focus on though is this idea of counting the cost. When I worked as a youth pastor, this was the greatest and most important lesson my dad ever taught me. Whenever you're making a decision, count the cost to determine if it's really the right one to be making. Take a moment, even if it's a snap-second quick one, to think about how the choice you're pondering will affect you and others. Because you better be really sure that whatever decision you're going to make is the right decision, if there's a chance it'll negatively affect or hurt others. To put it more in the context of the game, you better be really sure that whatever decision you perceive as leading to your progress and profit is the right decision, if it has the potential to hurt the world and those around you. Because in the case of Shinra, it often was not the right decision, but they made it anyway, and others unfortunately suffered because of it. There's this thought that the purpose of art in creating it is to express ideas and to evoke an emotional response. And I don't know if one could say if that's totally true. It's hard enough to define what is and isn't art as is, but even if someone painting or sculpting or writing a book puts no thought into its meaning or what they want it to make people feel or think, some will still be affected by it. I think in general though, most artists do have goals in mind for their creations. For a film or game, they obviously want it to be entertaining. I think you'd want any sort of art you engage with more than just visually to be fun to experience. Or maybe you'd want someone to feel surprised or inspired or immersed in the piece. The question is, does the success to which a piece elicits an emotional response have any determinant on its quality? Obviously, something could be horrible, which might make you feel an abundance of negative emotions, but I mean in terms of intended design by the creator. If a piece of art is successful at impacting you in a way it was intentionally designed to, does that mean it's good? Well, I could think differently in the future, but right now I think yes. That might be a good determinant for good art versus bad art. The only problem being that it's still all subjective anyway, but if you're ever sticking a label on something in reference to its quality, you're reviewing it. And reviews are always going to be subjective and based on one's own tastes and experience with whatever piece of art they're reviewing. You have to know the reviewer. That's why I don't just try to create matter-of-fact videos, but insert jokes and stories and my personality into the scripts I write. I want you to be able to get a good idea of who I am. That will add context to my review of a game. And those of you who watch my content outside of reviews, things like Conversations on a Broken Couch, have a much better idea of what I like and how I think than what you'd simply be able to gather from these videos. So, why bring this all up? What's this all about? This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to write, because the game impacted me so strongly, and deciding on a review score for it has been incredibly difficult. I think it's an awesome game. It's super fun, but it's got some flaws like I mentioned, some of which can be excused while others can't be, even though it's old, or desires to innovate its genre and develop its franchise. But it's incredibly successful at telling an emotional story that if you engage with, will leave a lasting impact on you. And I think that its legacy is proof that a piece of art's skill at making you feel or think has to have some kind of relevance when determining its review score. I really think there are two types of 10 out of 10 video games. There are games like what I'll be reviewing next that are basically perfectly designed, and the one thing they really focus on being is fun. And then there are other games, let's use Super Mario Galaxy as an example, it's a 10 out of 10 according to my memory, that are still really fun and well designed, but have some flaws, yet succeed so much at making you feel that it's still a top quality game, even if it's not a perfect experience. In Mario Galaxy's case, I think it has a few odd design choices that negatively impact its quality, but the extreme amount of delight you feel while playing that game outweighs its flaws and lifts the game from a 9 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. What about Final Fantasy VII? FF7 is a really fun game, boasting tons of content that is mostly of high quality, that features an interesting and amazing cast of characters, an engaging and impactful story, beautiful music, deep turn-based combat, great graphics for its time, and a huge legacy that, like me, you may be inspired to jump into because of how enjoyable, memorable, and meaningful the game is. Through playing, it's truly become one of my favorite games ever, and I totally suggest you play it if you haven't. I give Final Fantasy VII a 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more video game previewers, then you should like and subscribe, because there will always be more on the way. What do you think about Final Fantasy VII? Let me know in the comments. God bless.